The sun was sinking low over the parched hills of Hunter's Hollow, casting long ribbons of amber light across the cracked ground of what had once been one of the region's most vibrant farms. Time, drought, and greed had worn down this land. Once, children had played among the cornfields, and horses had run free in the wide pastures. Now, silence clung to the air like a warning. At the edge of the property, leaning against an old, weathered fence post, stood Mabel Huntley. 93 years old and carved from the same stubborn earth she stood upon, Mabel looked out across the horizon. Her hands, gnarled and spotted with age, still gripped the wood with a quiet strength. Her eyes, piercing and pale green, stayed fixed on the small group of men on horseback just beyond her land. She didn't recognize their faces, not exactly, but she recognized the arrogance in their posture, the smirk on the one in front. These weren't neighbors. They weren't even thieves. These were men who believed fear was the same as ownership. Their leader, Roy Candler, known in whispered tones around town for the kind of business that didn't show up on paper, tipped his hat with an oily grin. "Just a matter of time, Miss Huntley," he called, voice smooth with pretend civility. "You might consider selling while there's still something worth buying." Mabel didn't blink. She stood straight, letting the wind pull a few silver strands loose from her tight braid. "This land has been in my family for 6 generations," she said, voice low and unwavering. "And if it dies with me." Roy's smile twisted, but he didn't argue. Not yet. He pulled on his reins, and the men wheeled their horses around, riding off in a cloud of dust. But Mabel knew deep in her bones this wasn't just about property. This was about power, about conquest. The barn fire last week wasn't lightning. The cows vanishing overnight wasn't bad luck. This was a siege slow, methodical, and cruel. That night, as thunder rumbled and wind shrieked through the brittle stalks of the ruined cornfield, Mabel sat alone at the old kitchen table, lit only by the flicker of a rusted oil lamp. Her fingers, stiff with arthritis, reached for the rotary phone mounted on the wall. Each turn of the dial clicked like a clock ticking down. On the other end of the line, a voice grunted, "Yeah, this is Cal." Mabel swallowed hard. "It's me," she whispered, her voice thin as paper. "I need you." 2,000 miles away in a rainy coastal town in Oregon, Cal Huntley froze in his tracks. He hadn't set foot on the farm in over a decade. He'd buried too many ghosts there: his father, his brother, his own guilt. But this was his grandmother. And this wasn't just about family. It was about home. Some battles didn't come with medals or uniforms. Some just came with a last name and a piece of land worth defending. By first light, a beat-up Dodge pickup truck rolled down the gravel road toward the farmhouse. Cal stepped out, 6'2" in worn boots, his broad frame casting a long shadow over the porch. The place looked tired. The paint was flaking off the siding, the windows rattled in their frames, but stood like Mabel herself, weathered and unbroken. Mabel was waiting for him, wrapped in a heavy wool coat, her breath visible in the cold morning air. "You came," she said softly, disbelief laced with relief. "You called," Cal replied. She looked out toward the horizon, the land she'd watched turn from golden to gray. "They want it, and they're not going to stop." Then they picked the wrong damn family. By noon, he'd seen enough. The barn, a scorched skeleton, reeked of burnt hay and fuel. The fence lines were slashed in several spots, prints in the mud where boots had prowled in the night. Inside, Mabel's hands trembled as she poured him coffee. "They come late," she said. "I hear 'em out there sometimes just inches from the porch. They leave notes." Cal unfolded a paper that had been wedged in the doorframe. The handwriting was crude. "Sell or burn." That was it. No more. The rest of the day, he went to work. Motion sensors mounted at the corners of the house. The old shotgun above the fireplace oiled, loaded, and ready. Every door and window reinforced. He didn't just turn the house into a home again. He turned it into a stronghold. Afghanistan had taught him how to survive. Now he'd use those skills for the only battle that ever really mattered. "You were always this way," Mabel said from the porch as she watched him. "Even when you were a boy." Cal gave her a half smile. "Some things never change." That evening, Cal drove into the center of Hunter's Hollow. Time had barely moved here. Same faded storefronts. Same worn-out signs. But the town felt smaller now. Meaner. He stopped at Rose's Cafe, slid into a booth. The waitress, Linda, who'd once been his babysitter, blinked in surprise. "Well, I'll be. Kaluli. Didn't expect to see you back." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Heard Roy Candler's been busy." Linda leaned in, lowering her voice. "Owns half the town now. Sheriff won't do a thing neither bought or scared out of his boots." Cal looked around, expression unreadable. Then maybe it's time someone reminded him who really runs this place. Before she could answer, the bell above the door chimed. Roy Candler sauntered in, flanked by two goons. He spotted Cal immediately. "Well, hell," Roy grinned. "Navy boy's back. Come to play hero." Cal stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Leave my grandmother alone." Roy laughed. "She's sitting on the last piece of decent land for miles. I'm just trying to help her before something happens." Cal's voice dropped to steel. "She's not selling." Roy's grin faltered. "Then things are going to get real unpleasant." Cal stepped closer. "For you." That night, the fight began. It started with whispers, shadows at the edge of the yard. Cal saw them through the curtain slits and tapped Mabel on the shoulder. "Stay low. Don't move unless I say." He'd rigged a tripwire across the gravel. When it snapped, a loud crack shot through the night. One of the men tripped into a rake Cal had placed as a trap. Another barely had time to react before Cal tackled him to the ground and knocked him out cold. A shot rang out from the porch Mabel, firing into the sky with the shotgun. The attackers scattered, shouting, cursing into the dark. "You can't protect her forever." Roy's voice called from the shadows. "Want a bet?" Cal replied. At dawn, Mabel sat at the kitchen table, her cup trembling in her hands. "We can't do this alone," she said. "We won't," Cal promised. Engines growled in the distance. He stood, rifle in hand, heart steady. But it wasn't Roy. It was the Hollow. One by one, trucks and tractors rolled down the dusty road. Neighbors, farmers, old friends, men and women who remembered what community used to mean. Hank Ramirez, a rancher with a limp and a 12-gauge, stepped out of his truck. "We heard what happened," he said. "We're tired of being afraid." "We're with you, Cal," someone else shouted. They didn't come with armor or tanks, but they brought grit, tools, and heart. Together, they built barricades, dug trenches, set up night watches. Cal showed them how to hold a perimeter, how to use light and noise to their advantage. They weren't soldiers, but they were homegrown. And they had something Roy Candler didn't: unity. When Roy came back, he wasn't facing a stubborn widow and her grandson. He was facing a town that remembered who it was. The final fight came with fire. The barn went up again, but this time the flames were met with water lines and volunteers. Fists flew. Cal and Roy met in the dirt in a brutal brawl, raw and dirty, each punch carrying years of anger. Bloodied, breathing hard, Cal pinned Roy to the ground. "You don't own this place," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Sirens wailed in the distance. The sheriff finally showed up, forced out by the townsfolk, red-faced with shame. Roy and his men were cuffed and hauled off. The Hollow roared like it hadn't in years. The next morning was calm. The smoke had cleared. The fences were being mended. The farmhouse still stood. "You saved it," Mabel said, voice soft as wind. "We saved it," Cal replied. Hunter's Hollow wasn't just a patch of earth. It was memory, sweat, love, and thanks to a woman too old to run and a man who came home when it mattered, it was still theirs. "Are you staying?" she asked. Cal looked at the fields, the rebuilt barn, the people laughing and hammering together. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." The wind carried the scent of soil and ash. Cal Huntley knew then what he hadn't known in all his years: overseas some wars are fought with rifles, but the ones that matter are fought with heart. Right where you're planted, where your roots are. And some victories don't come with flags. They come with staying, with rebuilding, with choosing love. Always.